Call our meeting to order. Good evening. I'm Mary Sylvester, and I'm president of the Auburn Water District Board of Trustees. And as board president, I will be presiding over tonight's public hearing. My first duty is to officially convene tonight's hearing, and it is 5 p.m. And for those of you who like to read along, you can see my text. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to provide information concerning the proposed rate increase for customers of the Auburn Water District, and to allow customers and the public advocate, if present, to testify and ask questions. The hearing is being held pursuant to 35A MRSA Section 6104 and Chapter 120, Section 7B3 of the Maine Public Utility Commission's regulations. The Auburn Water District is proposing an increase in water rates to become effective March 1st of 2020. It has been 3 years since the last rate increase, as the existing rates have been in effect since March 1st of 2017. The proposed rates will be implemented by an across-the-board change in rates for all customer classes, and the rates for each customer class will be increased by 13.7%. The minimum residential customer using approximately 9,000 gallons per quarter, or 1,200 cubic feet, will experience an increase of $5.82 each quarter. This would be an increase of approximately 6 cents per day. The average family will see an increase of approximately 10 cents a day, or $8.75 per quarter. The revenues from public fire protection will increase 24%. Charges for sprinkler systems and private hydrants will increase 13.7%. The two reasons for the proposed rate increase are to fund a water main replacement program moving from 1.5 miles per year to 2 miles per year, and to meet industry standards by increasing cash on hand to enable 100 days of operation. I would like to point out that the Auburn Water District's rates are extremely competitive when compared to other water utilities in Maine. As you will see in the presentation, even after the proposed increase, Auburn will still have among the lowest water rates in the state. Customers of the district have a right to a fair and open hearing this evening, and have the right to further proceedings before the Maine Public Utilities Commission, as well as assistance from the public advocate. Copies of all materials supporting the proposed rate change were filed with the Commission and the public advocate on December 13th of 2019, and have been on file at the district's business office since that date for inspection by district customers. The district will promptly provide any readily available relevant additional information or material requested by a customer, the Commission, or the public advocate. After receiving comments and questions from you tonight, the district will consider these comments, and within the next 30 days, but not sooner than 10 days of this public hearing, will file a formal rate schedule with the Maine Public Utilities Commission. The rate schedule will specify an effective date for the rate change, which will be at least 1 month, but not more than 9 months from the date the rates are filed with the Commission. The formal rate filing by the district may be reviewed by the Public Utilities Commission in accordance with 35A MRSA 6104. Petitions by district customers demanding a review of the rate change by the Commission must be filed in accordance with 6104 paragraph 7, must bear the signatures and printed names and addresses of petition signers, and must include at least 1,000 customers of the Auburn Water District. Upon request, the district will provide customers with petition forms that include spaces for signatures and the printed names and addresses of the signers. Upon receipt of customer petitions in accordance with Section 6104, paragraph 7, the Commission may suspend, investigate, review, and change the proposed rates. As of tonight's hearing, however, the Maine Public Utilities Commission has made no determination and has taken no position concerning this proposed rate increase. After the district has presented information concerning the proposed rate changes, I will open the public hearing for comments and statements from questions from members of the public who are present at tonight's hearing. Persons wishing to make statements or ask questions will approach, there's no podium.
We can simply, given the size, we can simply have
You
them
may
stand.
certainly speak from your seat, I think.
Oh, thank goodness. That podium's so intimidating.
I thought as I was reading that, doesn't seem like we need that.
There's nobody on the little podium.
We couldn't bring our own, and state their name and address. I would also request that you fill in your name and address on the sheet located on the table over there. Any questions should be directed to me, and if appropriate, I will redirect those questions to the individual who may be best able to answer your question. Before proceeding, I'd like to introduce the fellow members of our Board of Trustees and our Superintendent of the District who are here this evening. And so I'll start with,
I'm Tiz Crowley, Auburn Water Trustee. I term in March 1st.
she's smiling,
Casey Geiger, Water Trustee.
and I'm Mary Sylvester.
Bob Kavanaugh, Water District Trustee.
Steve Phelps, City Council.
We're, two of our trustees were unable to be here this evening, one due to weather and one due to a family situation. I'd like to introduce our superintendent, Sid Hazelton,
Sid Hazelton.
and other staff. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Tanya Dunn, Finance Manager.
Mike Broadbent, I'm the Assistant Superintendent.
There are copies of the information available for your review over on the table. They include a copy of my opening remarks, an agenda for this hearing, a spreadsheet showing a comparison of Maine water rates, a copy of the initial rate filing submitted to the Public Utilities Commission, and the customer petition forms. I'll now turn the floor over to the district superintendent, Sid Hazelton, who will present information on the proposed rate chart change.
Thank you. I do have a slideshow. I promise I'll keep it brief. We've got a small crowd here. Given the size, if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt and we'll do the best we can to answer any questions you have. Hopefully, when we're done with this presentation, I'm trying to address the issues that I think people are anticipating, so we'll see how it goes. Just for those, I think most of you are familiar with the water district, but just in case you're not, and for those who might be watching later, this is being, just so you do know, this public hearing is being recorded and it will be available on our website. So the Auburn Water District, Lake Auburn is the only public drinking water supply for the cities of Auburn and Lewiston. There is no other public source. We have done some investigations a few years ago. We've looked for sources of groundwater. They simply do not exist. And that's why it's so critically important to protect our precious water supply, Lake Auburn. Auburn began withdrawing water from the lake back in 1875. So we have 145 years of history of using Lake Auburn as a public water supply. It's one of the few unfiltered water supplies in the state, and that's a real credit to people who have done a lot of work long before I came to the district, but I certainly intend to continue that. In 1923, a charter was made with the state legislature to form the Auburn Water District. We've been a district since then. We are considered to be a quasi-municipal organization. We are governed by a 7-member Board of Trustees, 5 of which are here tonight that you've met. We have approximately 6,800 metered customers in Auburn. We withdraw last year 2.46 million gallons a day from the lake. So that's roughly what we use. We have about 130 miles of transmission mains throughout the city of various sizes, shapes, and colors. We're here tonight to discuss the rate adjustment The Auburn Water District intends to increase annual revenue by $558,410. As Mary mentioned, equates to an overall increase of 14.9%. All metered customers and private fire protection rates are increasing by 13.7%. Public fire protection charges will increase by 24%. One thing I wanted to address right here, because there have been some questions, why is the public fire protection rate going up 24% when the rate itself is only going up 13.7? In some of the handouts that I have out there, one of them that I put on the table, we are regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. And I don't know if you did grab a copy of that, but there is a statute that I copied. It's a chapter, look at my glasses, I can't see. Chapter 69. It's a rule that establishes a formula for determining, for rate-making purposes, the percentage of gross revenue that water utilities should derive from fire protection charges. In that is an explanation of the calculation that we come up with for determining that fire rate. It also includes and references a fire curve, which there's also a copy there, if you've got it. You basically take a ratio of your hourly peak demand of water divided by the required fire flow. That gives you a ratio, which goes onto a curve, which determines the percentage of revenue that you need to appropriate to public fire protection. In this case, the overall rate that we need to charge per percent is 19% of our overall revenue needs to come from fire protection charges. When you apply that to the amount of revenue that we currently have, plus the revenue we anticipate as part of this rate increase, that makes our public fire charges increase by 24%. Yes.
Doesn't the fire department have to get its revenue from the citizens too?
Could you
Well,
repeat the question so we can all
Good.
hear it?
Doesn't the fire department have to get its revenue from the citizens too? So in other words, if the fire department is paying money to the water department, and the citizens are paying the fire department, so the citizens are paying the water department for their use, and they're paying the fire department for their water use too. Right?
This fire protection charge is billed to the city of Auburn. We are not a city department, so we.
Yeah, but the public would therefore be responsible for that, right?
Yes, correct. That's correct.
Where does, when you say protection charges, what is that? Is that like when this building's sprinkled and another building's sprinkled? or-
No, that's basically, sprinkler charges are different. Those are charged under the metered customers under the 13.7%. Sprinklers are different. When I'm talking about public fire protection, that is the charge for the hydrant system, the tanks that we need for storage in order to deliver enough water to put out a fire. It's all of our hydrant system that we have and the infrastructure needed for that. It's the accounting for the oversizing of pipes in order to deliver the volume of water we need for fire protection. It's those things that go into the public fire protection.
The hydrant is sitting right on the water line, the same water line that our drinking water comes
Right,
from.
right.
So there's nothing special changed there, is there?
Well, it's the availability. If there's a fire, we have to have a certain volume of water available for fighting fires. If we didn't have to provide public fire protection, our system would be much, much smaller. But it's the availability of being able to have enough water to suppress fires. That's what that charge is.
Excuse me. Does the state also set those requirements of what you need for either number of hydrants, flow requirements, or coverage?
The actual requirement for fire hydrants is something that we get from the fire department, the Auburn Fire Department. We do periodically have to test our hydrants to make sure they have adequate flow, and that goes into the fire rating that the city of Auburn gets. But that calculation is something that every water department goes through in the state, being regulated by the PUC.
The fire department, when I saw their last numbers that they put out, there are less fires now than there ever has been. I can't understand why, if we're using less water, because there's less fires, why is it so important that this increase is out there?
Well, I'm not sure if I can answer that. I mean, we just never, I do not know, and no one knows when the next fire is going to come. I mean, and you're right, they're given the prevention and the requirement for sprinklers that buildings have now, probably the frequency of fires is a lot less. But the formula for determining that has not been changed for quite some time.
Well, the water district comes by and maintains all those hydrants. I see them
Yes,
come by.
we do.
We have one on our property.
We maintain those, we shovel them out, we flush them, we make sure that they're in the winter, we have to make sure the barrels are pumped out so they're not gonna freeze.
I was wondering when that was over.
Yeah.
But is there a charge to the city for each hydrant?
No, there's not for each hydrant, there is, it's the overall percentage of revenue that's charged for fire protection. So if there is a new hydrant added, there's no extra charge for an extra hydrant. The only way that comes into play is we also have hydrants in the town of Poland. So they are going to be subject to this increase as well as part of the fire protection charge. And we do apportion that charge based upon the number of hydrants. You know, there are 580 some odd hydrants in Auburn and like 30 something in Poland. So the proportion of that fire charge is based upon the number of hydrants Auburn versus Poland. But there is no, if Auburn has a development go in, a new street, new hydrant goes in, we don't charge an annual hydrant fee for new hydrants that go in. So this is the rate schedule, again, that Mary alluded to. This is the time frame we're following for this rate increase. We did file initially on December 13th to the Public Utilities Commission. On January 2nd, we did send notices to all customers. We published the notice in the newspaper. Here we are today, January 16th, a public hearing. January 28th is when we plan to file the final rate case information of the PUC with a plan to have the new rate effective March 1st of 2020. And again, it's been explained about the petition process. That's something that, why is this rate increase needed? Two reasons. Number one, to accelerate the rate of replacement of aging infrastructure. And number two, to attain industry standard of 100 days of operating cash on hand. Approximately 2/3 of the additional revenue is targeted for replacing more infrastructure. Right now, we're budgeted for replacing 1.5 miles of pipe per year. With this rate increase, that will enable us to increase that to 2 miles of pipe per year. The reason that's important, we do have a long-term capital improvement program in place for addressing aging infrastructure. As I mentioned before, we have over 130 miles of pipe. A lot of that is made up of cast iron or cement-lined cast iron. I brought my little show and tell case here. That is a coupon, if you will, of a cast iron pipe that was in service 3 years ago on 5th Street. That pipe right there, it doesn't look like a pipe, but that was a pipe that was in service and delivering water. You can imagine the inadequacy of that type of pipe in our streets. We still have over 30 miles of pipe that looks just like that in the street.
wouldn't fight much of a fire with that, would you?
No, you wouldn't. If there was a hydrant hooked up to that, I mean, you couldn't put a pencil through that line. That was supplying water. It's, we replaced that line, but there's more of it out there. Obviously, having a pipe like that in your system, it's bad for a number of reasons. Whenever we get a water main break, that is the type, 99.9% of the time, that's the type of pipe that breaks. It's a cast iron pipe, it's very strong, and it's lasted over 100 years. You can't say it's bad pipe because anything that lasts 100 years, but it is very brittle and it's subject to cracking. And like I said, when we get a water main break, it's always on that type of pipe. So if we can replace more infrastructure that avoids the majority of those breaks, it increases the water quality and quantity, it reduces our maintenance cost. And one thing to point out, we do have a long and very good working history with the city of Auburn. We work Mike Broadbent, Assistant Superintendent, works very closely with the city to make sure that if there is a street that's being reconstructed, we're working with them. It doesn't make any sense to have a brand new street with a pipe that looks like that in it. We work with them to take advantage of our construction schedules and save a little money on both sides. So we do have a long and very good history of working with the city on those types of things. The other reason for the rate increase, this is a smaller portion of that rate increase, but we do need to attain the industry goal of having 100 days of cash on hand. Right now, we vary between 40 and 60 days of cash on hand. That margin's just a little too close for us. We need to do what we can to get reserves so that we can operate for 100 days. So that's the other goal of this rate.
Can you tell us what that number would be in cash if you're talking 100 days?
That's roughly 600,000. The industry standard of 100 days, there's another formula out there, roughly 25% of your gross annual revenue. So that is, that's our goal. And this rate increase will enable us to get that by the end of this year, 2020. How will this increase affect our customers? I don't know if you can see this number, but I broke it down in terms of two different typical scenarios. The one above is a typical home. A typical home is a picture of family, if you will, and how this would affect a family. Currently, it costs around $255 a year for a typical family for the water that they use. After this 13.7% rate increase, that number will go up to $290. So they can expect an annual increase of around $35 per year or 10 cents a day. The other scenario we have is below here is the minimum user. And what we consider to be a minimum user is using under 1,200 cubic feet per quarter. That equates to about 100 gallons a day. Is someone we consider to be a minimum user. That person, their existing water bill is roughly $170 a year. After this rate increase, that would go up to $193. So over the course of a year, a minimum user would see their water bill go up by $23 a year. So that equates to around 6 cents a day.
That's it? So do you
Yes.
have an example of a commercial customer, one fairly decent commercial customer, and what it'll do for them?
That varies so widely that we have a lot of commercial customers who are minimum users, but on the other end of it, some commercial and industrial, we have a tiered usage system, so it's hard to answer that for any one.
They're going up 13% too.
Yes, that's
So I
right.
mean, I'm looking at future economic growth for the city, and yeah, it's minimal for the small water user, but if we're trying to attract industry and we keep going up and up and up, it's pretty significant when you're talking a commercial user.
Any commercial user, their existing water bill would be going up 13.7% if they
It would help to have an example, just pick one out that's a fairly major user, you know, what their water history is and how much more they're gonna pay.
What does an average restaurant use? Got an idea?
Well, we got a brewery, take the brewery, for example, take Gritty's. They must use a lot of water, right? Breweries use a lot of water.
Boy,
I would urge you to answer that and post it publicly about what the summary is, but I do not think it's perfect for us to discuss individual customers, particularly, and I'm going to pick on not just Gritty's, but the brewery district industry is an up and coming and important industry in Auburn and in Maine, and I would imagine that there may be some competitive issues when it comes to cost of everything, but very good water. So I think we should answer it. I would take the top five and the bottom five, average them out and distribute it publicly at our meeting next week.
Excellent suggestion.
we do that. That's probably the best way to approach that. Because I mean, off the top of my head, I don't have a,
It's not a good way to handle it off the top of our heads anyway.
but they will be going up 13.7%.
But Andy, you're welcome to come to our meeting next
I
Wednesday.
plan on being there. I'm gonna be in the audience, so watch out for open session.
Well, it'll be on the agenda.
One question that we do get quite often, and I just wanted to address it here, why do we have a minimum charge? I do get that question a lot, so I just kind of wanted to explain that quickly. Most main water utilities, and if you go across the state, that is the standard, by and large, the standard of how main water utilities are set up. They do have a minimum charge based upon 1,200 cubic feet per quarter, which is 9,000 gallons a quarter or 100 gallons a day. That's probably the easiest way to remember it, if you use around 100 gallons a day. The minimum charge covers the fixed cost of the 24/7 availability of water. It's the things that go into that fixed cost are things like the water treatment compliance. Of course, it costs money to protect the water supply. It costs money to treat the water so that it meets the drinking water standards. There's a lot of testing involved to make sure that it meets the standards. We have to maintain our water mains, our infrastructure. As I mentioned, source protection is an expense to delivering water. And of course, we have operating costs, equipment, supplies, facilities, personnel. All those are fixed costs that don't really relate directly to the volume of water that's utilized. So those are the major reasons why there is a minimum charge. We have looked at alternate formulas for funding what we do. A few years ago, we did have a study done kind of looking at maybe reducing that minimum or coming up with an alternate billing arrangement, but it came back to us that what we have is the standard across the state, and it seems to make the most sense for what we're trying to do.
There's a question back in the back.
Yep.
So if I'm to understand this correctly, if you have a meter and you don't use it at all, the minimum charge would be $42.25 or $48.27?
If your usage is under 1,200 cubic feet per quarter. So if you use less than that, you still get the minimum charge.
Right, okay. So I brought a water bill from 2014. We have 2 meters on our property and one doesn't get used sometimes. So the minimum charge in 2014 was $21 with no use at all. And so now we would be looking at $48.27
The minimum,
for no usage at all. Is that correct?
the minimum charge now should be, you said, what was the date of that?
This was 2014.
14?
There was a rate increase in between there because here we are 3 years later.
There was a rate increase in 14 and
There was.
17, but that sounds low.
Well, I got it right here.
Okay.
All I'm saying
Yeah.
is the reason I came to this meeting is because I'm seeing an exponential increase in our water rates. And, you know, there needs to be a really good rationale for this because if it keeps going up like this, it's just impossible for the public to deal with, or businesses, or anybody else. So that's kind of my concern. If if a $20 charge in 2014, right here with zero usage, is now gonna be $50, that's a massive increase. It doesn't relate to inflation or anything. And it just highlights my concern.
Thanks for expressing that concern. I mean, that's what we're here to listen to tonight. So that is a deeply appreciated moment
I
of
had to
input.
dig deep in my files to find this little job.
Yeah,
So, again, I'm gonna make a recommendation for that, because I think that's, number one, is this is the reason why we're here. Number two, we obviously know his data is correct, because it's on bill. So again, I would encourage us to take a copy of that bill and report next week over the history, because what's probably happened, when you'll have an account number and that, what has happened is there could be as many as 3 rate increases between that bill and what we're proposing, if that's agreeable to everybody.
so a couple things just to offer is all of our meetings are public meetings, and you'd be welcome to attend. Our next one is actually next Wednesday at 4 p.m. at the Water District office. And I think Tiz's suggestion is a good one. We could take, if you wish, make sure Sid has your account number, and we could take the 2014 bill, look at the different rate increases that have occurred since 14 and just have a comprehensive look at that.
Well,
So-
I mean, I think it's just a global view of what's happening to rates. And it really, I mean, the water resource here is a public resource, you know? I mean, my great-grandfather gave most of that Whitman Spring Road land to the city of Auburn for the people of Auburn. And now, you know, that was a gift at no cost to anybody, you know? And so you have this gigantic puddle of water here, and there's these exponential increases. And while it looks good comparative to other water rates around the state, that shouldn't be the justification for increasing our rates. You know, we should continue to have.
Thanks for, I mean, we're here to hear the questions and concerns, and this is helpful, so thank you.
So we are in agreement that we'll get that, Mary?
Yeah.
Do that. Again, this is just a simplified version of it, just a point to bring home. The minimum user is gonna see 6 cents a day for this increase. The typical family, what we consider using 165 gallons a day, is going to see an increase of 10 cents a day for this increase.
Again, all that looks nice, and to some people may soften the blow, but it doesn't soften the blow at all. You can break it down by the hour, then by the minute, then by the second. It'll be minus something at the end. But we're here, I know most of us are here tonight because there's been 3 since 2014, 2 increases for sure, maybe 3. And the last one that you had was, or the one before that, I can't remember which one, was going to extend the pipe a mile and a half.
Right.
And it was going to, in 60 years, we were going to be all caught up, but we're still going to be behind 60 years because the old pipe 60 years ago put in will be older than 60 years. So you can keep charging and keep using the 1.5, 1 3/4, 2 miles, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean that breaks aren't going to happen. It doesn't mean other costs ain't going to happen. The taxpayer cannot afford 15% increase every 3 years. They can't. When I went to one of your meetings there 3 years ago, I said we should be increasing slowly so taxpayers don't, or users don't feel like they're being sucked into a place where they can't get out of. And you zap people at 15%, I don't care if it's only $6 or if it's $9 or if it's $2. It's not what they planned on for a rate increase. It's bad enough that our county can tax us 7% every time they turn around and nobody can stop them. This is almost the same thing. Nobody can slow you people down. You're gonna go 15, 20, 16, 14, 13, and now we're gonna go after the business users. We haven't had enough time to get business users here. We haven't had enough time to take the Norway Savings Bank Arena and even come close to breaking even. And here we are, we're gonna attack them. You want a water user, look at what their use is, and look at the bill we're paying, this increase at 13.9 is more money than what I take in a year. So this is ridiculous for the city of Auburn.
Well, it really amounts to over 100% increase in 5 years.
If your numbers are correct,
In
yes.
2014, I paid $20 and I'm gonna be.
I'd like to,
Yeah, there might be.
We're gonna research
yeah,
that.
we'll research that, that's okay, that's okay. I just want to
Meeting
get
is over.
together with you.
We'll get
But
clear on
in
that.
effect, if the number, we'll say, I know it's correct, but anyway, so it looks like a, over 100% increase in 5 years. And we took, the water district's been in place since 1875 or so. So it's taken since 1875 to get up to $20. And then in 5 years, you're more than doubling. That's just, it's hard to comprehend, actually.
The only comment I'll offer, and then I think, we want to hear more from Sid, is that we have also more than doubled our pipe replacement rate. We were not long ago at less than half a mile of replacement per year, and we're now at 1.5.
When was the half a mile number?
In my lifetime, in my 8 years here, when you and I served, we were at a half.
We're talking 5 years though, that's
Yeah.
what he's talking,
Yeah.
not 8
No,
years,
no,
so.
No, within the last 5 years, we were at a half a mile a year. And with the rate increase in 2017, we got to 1.5 miles per year, and we now feel it's responsibility to try to increase that rate so we can reduce that pipe and reduce our breaks, though it won't eliminate them. And I will just say, before we leave this topic, that thanks to what former Counselor Titus, our trustees did vote in December to do a study to look at a variety of financing options that could include not doing every 3-year rate increases, which do add up when it's flat for 3 years and then all of a sudden it jumps. So we will be studying a variety of alternatives to this current plan so we can make informed decisions about it. And I can assure you that when he was on council and on our board, Andy was very clear in helping us understand the importance of looking at these alternatives. But we also understood that, because the board really spent considerable time working on this issue. We spent several months studying it in detail. We looked at a variety of options before there were votes, and we voted on several options. We also do feel that we have a responsibility to maintain and replace pipe so that we are getting rid of the old stuff, which is also a disservice to families and businesses if you don't have functioning water. You have to shut down, sometimes homes have to go onto boil orders, and it disrupts traffic terribly. So we're trying to do it all. I will credit that this year's budget did not go up. So we worked hard. This is a flat budget. So this is not due to exorbitant spending. This is due to really pushing out the pipe replacement plan and restoring our days of operating cash. So we're really committed to a frugal operation. We run a tight ship, and I do commend our staff and the crews who work hard on breaks. As you can recall, this summer we had several serious ones. They were flat out 60-hour days practically. More hours in the day than there were hours to get us back online with 3 big breaks in a very short time. So we've got a lot to work on that balances things, and we're really a committed board to being frugal.
I feel the same way about what we do too as counselors.
Yeah,
We do a lot of work too.
Yeah, I know you
But
do.
there are times that we have to say, we want too much and we have to come down. 15% or 13, 14.92, whatever, is too high. We shouldn't be over 10%. And you should be able to figure out if you do 10%, what would you have to do next year or the year after? Hitting us every 3 years, 15% is way too much money.
Point taken. Thanks.
Could I just add, since he mentioned a public building that we all own and pay for as it continues to lose money, that in addition to the two examples, we see what the water rates and issues have been for Norway Savings Bank over the last 8 years.
Sure, yeah,
And
we have the records of those.
No way. Okay. Yeah.
I have to correct myself, I'm looking at this here bill, and it is for a shorter period.
Yeah,
There's something, so the minimums are probably around 32 bucks.
yeah. Thanks. Appreciate
Okay.
that you corrected
Well,
that. Because we knew it wasn't
I
100%.
got these two bills, one says 0, but as I look at it closer, it's for a day or something.
Yeah,
it still
thanks.
presents a good example, though, I
Well,
suppose.
we'll look
But
at
it's
the
still,
historic
it's still a
data.
bad
It's a
number.
good
It's a
example.
good,
It's still a bad number. I
it's
mean,
a
from
good
32
thing
bucks
to
up
look
50.
at, but we knew it wasn't 100%. I think it's important for us, if we've made the points that need to be made now, to continue with our presentation, if that's okay with those.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Uh,
Sid, please
apo-
continue.
I apologize for the, you can't see this slide, there's a lot of small print in here, but I do believe there's if you've got a copy, there's a higher resolution print of this. This represents 100 water utilities across the state. And this shows the annual cost of water. And this is recent data. This was published in May of 2019. This comes out every year. This is the most current one. You can see from this chart that the current water rate, this is Auburn currently. We are right now the 5th lowest water rate in the state. And that's due to a lot of different things. Probably the number one thing that allows us to deliver water at the lowest cost that we do is that our water is not filtered. We don't have to pay for a filter plant up at the lake due to the pristine nature of our water supply. That's enabled us to keep our costs down, and we're really proud of the fact that we are that low when you look across the state. At the top end of that chart, some water districts, some customers are paying $800 a year for water. We're down with this rate increase, we're down around $290 a year for water. As a result of this rate increase, we will go from number 5 to number 11. However, I do know that there are some water utilities that are between here that are looking at water rate increases, so I think we will continue to be down in the lower 10th of water rates across the state. So that's I know it's hard to say where our rates are going up, but I do hope there's some consolation to know that we do have amongst the cheapest water rates in the state.
Andy, was that a question you were about to ask? Trustee Grant, no. I think that's a competitive advantage for Auburn in economic development for customers of all sizes.
Well, there's a lot there that none of us know what all these other numbers stand for. There could be a lot of reasons why they're higher than we are.
Then there are.
I mean, we're believing that, we're 11th, but take away half their reasons up there, maybe they're only 12. So, I mean,
Just
we're only hearing half the story.
We need to
that he's
compare
telling us.
what their pipe replacement, what their infrastructure's like too. I mean,
We don't know that.
we don't know that.
Yeah, This is just showing the water rates, what they pay for water.
Where does Lewiston sit on that?
Lewiston is right here. So with this water rate increase, we will be one ahead of Lewiston, but I know, and I don't mind saying it publicly, I know that they're looking at a rate increase coming up shortly.
While you made the comment on our sister city, why hasn't there been a difference in the rate between what they're paying and we're paying when they're using more than what we're using in Auburn?
Our trustees are going to be, we voted at our most recent meeting, that we are going to look at a variety of models for how to move into our discussions with Lewiston about cost sharing. And we're well underway in understanding alternatives to the current. But as you can appreciate, there are a lot of complexities to that topic, and it's the next item of business on the trustees' agenda. Literally.
I remember that question coming up when Tiz Riley was a counselor and asking the water district why wasn't the research done then. That's why I'm asking again, because it's taken 4 years for sure
Yeah.
to even
Well,
get you work on
I've
it.
been president since last March, well, actually last April, because it took some time for us to complete our election, and it is, we voted to move ahead, and we are doing so. We're committed to looking at a variety of alternative models.
One thing, as Mary alluded to, our operational expenditures have remained in check. If you look at our 2019 budget, our total expenses in 2019 were 3.257 million. For this current budget, 2020, which we just passed, that actually went down to 3.25 million. Our operating budget actually decreased by $6,100. I know it's not a lot, but I just wanted to demonstrate, our expenditures are not out of control. We are fiscally responsible. A major driver of that, we're always looking for the most competitive health insurance out there. This is just one little example to pick out of our budget. We did have a 4.2% decrease in our insurance premiums, which did help to drive the cost of our budget down. Just to know, we're not sacrificing the budget at the expense of the employees. We also make sure that our employees are being paid appropriately and competitive with, or comparable with the peers in our industry. We did implement a pay study last year that did get our employees up to their peers in the industry. One good note that we have coming up is we have not taken out recent bonds. We do have a bond dropping off in 2022, which is going to reduce our bonded debt by $267,000 a year. And as those bonds drop off, obviously that's only going to help us. So that was another thing to note. And with that, that's it for the presentation. If there are other questions or comments on anything you've heard?
Andy?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Sid, for that presentation. I just had a couple of comments that I wanted to make relative to 3 items. One of them has to do with the fire protection charges. As you know, I was one of those guys who didn't feel that was a fair thing. We checked with the PUC, and as it turns out, obviously, that is a system that was set up long ago when fire protection services were designed primarily as fire protection first and water service second. In many smaller communities, that's how the thing got started. So they had the idea that, well, we need to fund those hydrants and that fire protection, and then people can tap off it for water. But that was many, many, many years ago. A lot has changed since then. And I felt it was very unfair that the PUC's answer to a question was, well, I'm surprised it's that low. It should be higher. Well, they're just going along with a formula that I think is outdated and needs to be looked at. Because we want fire protection, absolutely. But to have that kind of a disparity to me is totally wrong. I know that the district is going to start looking into, maybe we get some answers. I have my Senator Ed Claxton and another representative looking into it to see what the state can find out on their side. Because there is legislation that requires us to do this. We have no choice. The fact is, if we didn't charge 24% for fire protection, we would have to roll that over to the ratepayer anyway. So it isn't like it's just where the funding comes from. The rate is the rate, the expenses are the expense. But I just think that it's bad publicity for you to have a rate increase that really takes advantage of the city every time that happens. It would be much better politically and softer blow to the city, knowing we're not gonna get whacked 24% every time there's an increase. So it needs to be looked at and changed, and I know it starts at the PUC and the state level maybe, but it needs to be changed. It's an unfair funding formula, and it shouldn't be there.
Sounds like it's historic and archaic.
Well, it started when it was first originally, I think there probably was some communities that we said, well, listen, we gotta save the houses, and you can tap off the water, so they wanna make sure they had good
Right.
piping for the fire protection first, and then water second. As it relates to water rates, I did want to make the mention that we don't know what the pipe replacement programs are for those municipalities, or how good their infrastructure is. So it's really hard to know where our rate really falls. We need to have reliable water systems, no doubt, which goes to my third point about pipe replacement. You mentioned 130 miles of pipe, 20 to 25 of it is like that maybe, or worse. And 2 miles a year, we're gonna be living with that for 10 years based on our current funding formula, which is to use cash to replace pipe. And it's been the funding formula forever. 30, 50 years ago, they were doing it this way. It hasn't worked, because we still have a lot of bad pipe in the ground, and we're still going up 15% every 3 years. So I feel that we need to look at a different alternative way, because we're not getting it done. So it's causing a problem, a rift, increases all the time, and it's still not getting the replacement product done the way it should be done. So I just feel that going forward, and I know that the district is going to be looking into it, but it's really important that we do that, because again, it costs what it costs. I think people would understand if we had to borrow or bond money to get pipe fixed quicker, so we had that infrastructure that's reliable and works, and not that, they can pay a rate increase more so than every 3 years, saying, well, we want to increase it to 2.2 miles now, or 2.3 miles. It would go over better. So that is my opinion on those three things. I just want to make that. Also, I don't know if this is going to be read into the record. Are you going to read this, Dan Dilito's, into the record? I know this is a recorded meeting and he couldn't
I'd
be
be
here.
happy to.
Okay.
One of our trustees who could not be here this evening has created a document to be read into the record. And this is from trustee Daniel Billito, who writes, as a reappointed Auburn Water District trustee by the Auburn City Council and recently elected treasurer for the district, I'm opposed to the 15% rate increase and would suggest the Maine Public Utilities Commission revise the rate increase to 10%. Almost a year ago, I discovered that the Lake Auburn cost-sharing formula with the city of Lewiston was flawed. Unlike a written sewer cost apportionment agreement, the Auburn Water District has no agreement and draws approximately 40% of the water for the Auburn-Poland distribution system, but pays for 50% of the lake costs. Lewiston draws approximately 60% of the water and also pays 50% of the costs, creating an unacceptable disparity. For example, this past summer, an in-lake alum treatment cost Auburn ratepayers $80,000 more than it should have. Had there been a cost apportionment agreement, a fair act in practice with Lewiston, based on actual water withdrawal rates, there would be less issue with this rate increase. In fact, we would not have needed it altogether. This unfair practice has prompted a resolution attached by the Auburn City Council and Mayor requesting proper cost sharing going forward. Cost-sharing issue was initially opposed by the Auburn Water District Superintendent and some of the trustees, so there's been no formal action by the trustees until recently. The trustees, by a majority, have agreed to start negotiations with the city of Lewiston by researching and collecting more data. These recent efforts by trustees, in my opinion, do not negate our responsibility to fully disclose what we know to date. This should have been taken into consideration before asking our ratepayers to take on a 15% rate increase. This unbalanced cost sharing has been going on for decades, costing millions of dollars to citizens who have been overcharged. The UV disinfectant plant, built 14 years ago, was $4.4 million, and Auburn paid more than their share as expected, with no written agreement. I respectfully request the rate increase not be allowed in excess of 10%, knowing fully as treasurer that the Auburn Water District can easily request another rate increase next year if cost apportionment continues to be an unresolved issue. One final thought. What future costs will Auburn and Poland ratepayers be responsible for when our region-wide EPA requires our fragile and very unique unfiltered water system to meet federal surface water rules? We have been on a waiver from filtration since the early 1990s, and to properly filter our water will be an estimated $40 to $50 million in the year 2025. Thank you, Dan Bilodeau, the Auburn Water District Trustee and Treasurer. So that's his statement. It's in the public record, and it will be submitted along with all the other comments that we have from those of you who have come, plus any other comments that would be submitted to the PUC in their consideration of this request. I would say that this rate increase was studied for several months. We worked hard to understand all the options, all the information, the necessity, and we held several workshops, and finally had several votes that were taken because many options were brought forward, but this was the option that had the majority of trustee votes when the day of voting took place. So we have had a majority vote on this after considerable research and discussion. And it's never an easy set of decisions. So I commend all my fellow trustees for the hard work that was done in preparation for this. A lot of comments, a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts. Some members of the public, though not many, came to our meeting, and so before we conclude, and I'll make sure are there any final comments people wish to make, I do encourage everyone to come to our meeting. We always have open session. It is a hallmark of our meetings that there's a respectful opportunity to ask questions. We do discuss things thoroughly based on as much information as we can compile, and so that we can make well-informed decisions.
Trustees are volunteers.
And all of us trustees are volunteers. So moving on, Leroy, Councilor Walker.
PUC, why isn't there any one person here? Don't tell me it's because of the snowstorm, please.
This I can't speak to. Does anyone, Cindy, you know, I know we were expecting someone.
He didn't come the last rate increase that I was aware of. I remember Councilor Walker being
Oh,
there.
I guess they don't come. I thought-
Yeah,
I guess,
I've never seen them at the rate.
They react to our filing. They don't come to
Well,
our...
maybe it would be a good question to ask them, because I think it would be nice if one of them come here, because they're usually the ones that makes the determination, is your increase going in or going out? It'd be nice if we could speak directly to somebody.
They can't comment on 100 different water districts, everyone who has a rate increase. They can't attend everybody's meeting.
Well, we're not just anybody, as far as I'm concerned, we're the city of Auburn.
I
we
support
are-
well taken.
We are one of,
I
50
don't
or
care how many,
75.
we all have to pay our bills, right? If we don't, then they'll come, won't they?
I think the question is why could they come in the future and why were they not here is one we can submit as one of the comments.
I just wonder if, does the Public Utility Commission do anything other than just hear when you present them?
We'll be sending them, the minutes from this public hearing.
Right.
I'll
It's
send them a
been taped.
copy of
But-
the agenda, the presentation we made.
But would anything that the public or anybody said actually change anything that happened
That's,
with regard to the approval of the rate?
I guess that would be a question for the PUC directly. They're the ones that review the information we send them as a result of the public hearing.
Right.
As trustees though, we are totally committed to an open process of hearing from people. So I think, and I can't speak for the PUC, but they will get, and the notes will totally reflect, they'll be public documents, the minutes from this meeting, and so they can be corrected. If anything has been omitted, it's being taped, and that will be on our website. And we are totally committed to full transparency and accountability. And if anything is omitted, I hope you'll let us know.
Just to touch back on the 10% that I had mentioned, I want to make sure that at least you people know that I really feel that we shouldn't be increasing them. Like Dan said there, I think the formula between the two cities should have been something that we were working on at least a year ago, because it's been requested way before that. And to put it off so that we don't know if this is a fair increase or not a fair increase, it's not a true justification for the city of Auburn and the payers that have to pay for this water. Then Dan had something about $80,000 the city of Auburn paid for the treatment you had. Does that mean the city of Lewiston did not pay that share of that, or they pay a lesser share?
I think his analysis there was that project cost $800,000, the alum treatment. So what I think he's saying, if that would have been shared 60-40 as opposed to 50-50, Auburn would have saved, by his math, 80,000, said 80,000. I think
That's what he thought.
yeah. I think that was his analogy.
We are looking at cost sharing with an intention of, we're not just looking at it, we will be voting on how to proceed with that as after we've studied a few alternatives. Yes,
One last point I want to make, as it relates to fire protection. We have 3 councilors in the room here. So one of the things that I hope is going to be, I've asked the city manager and the mayor to look at when the budget season comes around, to look at the possibility of help funding a study. Because one of the things that we can do is, instead of the 24% automatic, in the future we can do a cost comparison, find out what it actually costs for fire protection. And by doing that, we can see, okay, well, this is what it really is, and this is what we're going to pay. Unfortunately, there's a rather expensive study, $30,000 to $40,000 that would be needed to dig in and decide what it actually costs for fire protection services. It's being done at Saco, or has been done just recently, and it costs them a fortune to do it. However, the city has a stake in this, and so I'm hoping that you can keep that in mind if it comes up during the budget deliberations, that it's very well, and a good presentation should show that it's got a chance to save the city of Auburn some money.
I think that should be duly noted, that that is an opportunity, and some cities do that. Any other questions from the community? Tiz, did you have a question?
Yeah, no, well, I comment back. So I want people to know that Sid and the staff didn't just prepare this information, that each time you do a rate increase, there's a substantial amount of documentation. It is also available, so don't think this is the end of it, which is part of our consideration each time of how often we go for a rate increase, because rate increase process is expensive. So if you want the rest of the data in public documents, people may not have heard this because we spend a lot of time, or we do too, on subjects not related to why we asked for this rate increase. We asked for this rate increase for 2 specific purposes: replace pipe and replace cash. There was no increase in the budget for what I think is called lake protection. So this argument about the Lewiston split and how it should work in that did not adversely affect this budget. It's not going away, it's high on our list, but reasons to say it should be 10 because of this, it has no impact. I think if the city of Auburn is interested in bringing and hosting a PUC presentation, I'm sure Councilor Walker would do that on our part, and I'm confident that the Watershed Protection Commission would do that. And before we close, what we have not heard from the public, which is the reasons for this. So we've talked about the cutting 10%. What suggestions do they have to meet our 2 requirements: replace pipe at minimum 2 miles a year, and to replace cash because we've used cash to do things?
Thanks for your comments. Any more comments that are needed before we are ready to adjourn?
Question though for you.
Yes,
You
sir.
had 3 breaks this year. I think one
Many
was
more than
Many
that.
more, but 3 really big
3
ones.
that
We
stuck
had,
out
we had
like a sore
three
thumb.
in 1 week. That was,
Yeah. One was Center Street,
one was
Minot Avenue.
One was Turner Street,
Turner
Rotary. That was it.
When were the pipes replaced on Center Street? Or Turner Street, whatever section you want to call this.
Center Street was 1930.
Turner Street, that was off a hydrant leg, and that was probably the cast iron hydrant, like we gave out.
Minot Avenue.
It's early 1900s.
Yeah, it was all cast iron stuff like that.
And then we had the third one
Spring
on
Street.
Spring Street.
Church Street side.
Yep, again, cast iron.
So we got rid of some cast iron anyways.
That's right.
Put in a
On the
repair,
schedule.
repair coupling, so yeah.
It's not replacing the pipe, it's just
Yeah.
replacing that one brick, so the
Yeah, but
pipe
it
is
gives you
still
a
in the
chance
ground.
to, it gives you a chance to see what the pipe looks like and
Right.
everything.
What,
We know, we have good records of where that stuff is, so we know where it all is.
So it's a case in point. Any other thoughts or questions, comments, concerns before we say goodnight for the evening? I will say I hope you'll come to our meetings, you're very welcome, and we will be following up. Otherwise, good night on a snowy evening, and thank you for coming tonight. And we are adjourned.